Futurama Issue 7. It starts out on New Year's Eve with an alien jumping from a building and being fine in a failed attempt at a joke. And it's just an annual event people watch for fun, apparently. This time the traditional ball on Times Square has been redesigned by Farnsworth. That can't be good. It uses a lot of nuclear power, and a single flame match could detonate it, destroying the entire East Coast. But the guy reporting on this stays cheerful about it because it's pretty. The Planet Express crew's at a party where Farnsworth is about to be interviewed about that ball. There's a blackout, which is what he was afraid of, because his ball used too much energy. This is why I assumed it wasn't drawing from the city's power grid, and had its own energy source instead to provide it with that much nuclear energy. But Farnsworth got reckless and assumed it could be fine. Fry's friends are pretty upset at not getting to watch the Times Square ball fall on New Year's. I never did that. Is that really such a big deal with most people? Farnsworth reveals that he tests his latest inventions on Fry when he's asleep. And Fry doesn't react to that. Probably forgetting he's Farnsworth's great uncle because he looks younger than him or something. And says they could still have fun if they asked what-if questions to that TV invention. That's an opportunity for the writer to get creative and write stories he wouldn't be able to normally. I guess you could say anthology stories are pointless, but it's an episodic series. Farnsworth says he designed it to run on batteries just in case. He was smart enough to prepare for the possibility that they'd want to use his invention at the beach at least. He wasn't too lazy to do this, but he's still reckless. Bender wonders what would happen if he traveled back to 1999. So we see Fry getting told by his awful ex-girlfriend to stop writing his stupid story with the self-insert character and get ready for New Year's. He says this is his final exam for that writing course at college, even though it was due a long time ago. So because he's refusing to go, she decides to cheat on him. And he somehow has faith in her to just be bluffing about that. Fry gets called by his boss and told to get to work on his day off because he has no one else to deliver pizzas. I guess his boss can't afford to hire anyone else to do it, and doesn't have the free time to do it himself. After that depressing scene, Bender gets spotted by a hobo who's amazed at seeing him and calls himself Bender's new master, expecting him to work for him right away to help him take over the world, instead of lying that he's Fry to make sure he'll work for him. He could also ask him why he's looking for Fry first. Maybe he could have used that to manipulate him. Tell him that he'll make sure he finds where he is. He's definitely crazy if he thinks one robot would let him take over the world. Bender's implied to have hurt the homeless person at best, and we're supposed to believe it's just because he's not Fry and not because he's annoying. At least it was refreshing after all my experience with Sabrina's stories that this guy immediately understood that this is a robot instead of the masquerade being upheld too easily. But that's probably just because he's already a crazy homeless person who wasted time warning people that robots would take over the world one day, which I'm pretty sure is already a part of Futurama's history, so maybe it was a joke that he was right. Then Leela wakes up in the past, where Fry used to go to school. I didn't know she'd be here too. Somehow there's a lap dancing course at a college, complete with a teacher, when this isn't technically the future where anything could be possible for all we know. Maybe this is only part of the simulation because the what-if machine doesn't know everything about the past, and only thinks this would happen because it's just a community college. Leela's told off for not wearing high heels when trying to go into the classroom, and somehow doesn't get people commenting on her being a Cyclops right away. Even though the fact that it's not just a mask or costume would be given away the second she'd blink. But somehow the teacher is polite enough to tell her Fry dropped the course because you could never make it through the first 5 minutes of the class. And hopefully she's just being sarcastic when she says, for some odd reason. Because she wouldn't be that naive. She says Leela could probably find him at the pizza place because of his delivery boy uniform he always wears, even to college. Apparently. She takes until now to ask Leela what's up with the eye, and Leela lies that she's from the circus and had an accident with an elephant and human cannonball. She can't just say she's a mutant. That'd be more believable, and is probably what everyone around her assumes is the case. The teacher replies sarcastically, at least I assume it's sarcasm, because there's no way she heard a story like that before. She must be too polite to call her out on her lying. Leela asks if there's something she could wear, since she was sent back in time with no clothes on purely because Terminator did it. Fry at least gets to finish his story. It's probably a dumb story, but there's a lot of people who would enjoy a story no matter how dumb it is, so that's still a good thing. Fry says he feels like the story is his legacy, and then he thinks Leela's a circus freak. She asks him if he's Fry, because for some reason she needs confirmation of that instead of going back in time because she already knew him as a friend. Huh? He assumes she's a hooker who can't be trusted because of her outfit and his bad experiences, when I thought he'd just appreciate seeing it. She lies that she's a new teacher at his college, and that she's dressed like that for comfort because it's a liberal school. She says she'd like to read his story, but he has to work. She wants to read his story first, and he says that if she really wants to talk, she can deliver the pizza with him. She says she can't let him do this because the fate of mankind depends on him. But then she has to let him do this because if he didn't get sent to the future, he wouldn't have been able to stop the brain aliens in their world domination plan of making everyone stupid because he's immune to their powers. Fry says he thinks Leela wants him to be in her class next semester, instead of properly reacting to what she said, because he thinks she'll say anything to get him in her class. He says he doesn't have any free time after his basic hygiene class, and Leela wishes she had her running pumps from the future. Why is she trying to stop Fry from being frozen? That would doom the future. This isn't a good what-if scenario then, because it's not really showing what happened if these two went back in time. Neither of them would care about his story. Fry goes to the cryogenics lab, and Bender tells him at gunpoint that he's his best friend in the future, and he'll be a dead man unless he comes with him. Leela says she's here to save him from the Bendernator who wants to destroy Fry and his story. Leela explains that in the year 2943, mankind will end up wiped out by nukes except for a few people who made it underground, and robots end up taking over the world and try to destroy any human they find for no explained reason until Fry comes along. I guess it's just discrimination. So he's needed to be a savior in this overly pessimistic future, to lead the humans into a war against machines and convince some of the robots to join him. Bender says he's become his most trusted friend in rebuilding a society of humans and robots living together in peace. Leela says that Fry kept his story in his tube with him. Because there are so few humans left who remember what society was like before the robots, the contents of his story end up becoming the doctrine by which the humans end up living. So she asks him for the story. Bender warns him that she's the real Bendernator, which would also be plausible considering earlier, like her trying to keep him from going into the future. Bender tells him something wild about what Fry ends up doing as the president, and Leela reveals that she really is the evil one because she's gonna take his story no matter what happens to him. Bender uses his ray gun to attack her. Fry wakes up, and she turns into a robot that looks like Bender. Bender says this makes sense because how else could a woman sprint 10 blocks in heels? But she would have tripped anyways. It looks like she was in actual heels. Bender shoots again, creating smoke, and brings Fry with him to an elevator. He's told to get behind Bender before the door opens. Bender lies to a woman that he's just holding a toy. She must be assuming he's just a guy in a costume. After Fry flirts with her, she doesn't question his confusing pickup line. But then Bender gives another explanation, that she's the robot in disguise. Bender waited until now to warn Fry that his sensors weren't picking up a heartbeat from her. So he gets grabbed and needs Bender to rescue him. The Bendernator melts out of Bender's hands and they run away. Bender says he needs to get to the time portal to the future at the top of Times Square before it closes at midnight. The Bendernator calls the police and reports Fry is kidnapped. Bender explains that he can't shapeshift because he's old school by comparison, and Bender expects me to believe Fry could fit in his chest. This is a pretty glitchy what-if scenario. Bender's legs extend like bunnies to get him up to the portal. A helicopter tells Bender to release Fry or else, and Bender says he can't be taken alive because his technology is dangerous in the wrong hands, so he'll have to self-destruct. Fry's upset about this and they shake hands. He jumps out of him, heading towards a convenient trampoline being held by people for some reason to help him. I guess it's there to catch him to save him from Bender. And he realizes that his story is still in Bender's chest. And he gets sucked into the time portal to the year 3000, where his story about what he thought the future would be like with no experience comes to Zoidberg. So Zoidberg decides to take credit for the story and become president. Apparently it didn't really matter if his story got to the right time period or not. With him. Zoidberg says it just wrote itself. But sadly, the what-if scenario ends instead of having him get questioned further and arouse suspicion. He wouldn't have anything to say after that. Bender's right, that did stink. After Bender pickpockets his friends as they're distracted by the Times Square bull, there's a second story actually, where Farnsworth reacts as if he's made a time machine for the first time, even though he made one in the show. So in this parallel universe, this is the first time he's made a machine that can send people into the future. I assume it can also send you back to the present time, or else you wouldn't think it was worth using. He somehow says that if you go into the future, you'll see how your life turned out. Even though if one of them did that, they'd just see a future where people moved on without them after they disappeared into a time machine. And Farnsworth just invented this thing. So he's not even saying this because he already saw their futures. Farnsworth says he'll need to perform one final test to see if humans can survive using it. He says he'll have to take full responsibility of being the one who created it, including the riches and fame of being its creator in the first place. So that's why he invented this catastrophic machine and is gonna test it. The story ends with the revelation that he didn't go to the future. He just fell asleep for 10 minutes. So he calls it an alarm clock instead. I guess he was so sleep deprived he fell asleep before he had a chance to turn the machine on. Apparently a story based on the Terminator was the only possible reason why Bender would have met Fry in the past. Because he needed to go back in time and save him from a robot so that he could become a hero and idiotic president in the present future. So how did he wake up early? It would have been a boring story if it was just as simple as I thought it'd be. Because all it consists of is Bender greeting Fry. And Fry would be interested in what he'd have to say about the future. And because he just had to meet Fry at around the time when he was supposed to be frozen, and not a lot earlier, he had to spend his time with him trying to make sure he gets to the future. He had a bad life in the present, but he was still attached to the people there. I'm just confused because the story took such a surprising twist. It's so confusing that the robot sent to destroy Fry in the past looked like Leela, because the Robot Society would have never seen Leela before. It only makes sense because the what-if scenario machine made this story, so it was just making the robot look like Leela because it knew about her. But it was trying to portray what it'd actually be like. Why would it be so lazy? That was a faulty invention. But if it hadn't had the Bendernator in it, or whatever its actual name was, it wouldn't have been an exciting story where Bender had to save Fry. It'd just be a story where people somehow don't freak out over Bender's appearance and he's underwhelmed by how lame the past is. This story pretended to be about a what-if scenario showing what it'd be like if Fry met Bender in the past, but I wasn't expecting it to be a Terminator ripoff out of nowhere.